Well, good evening and welcome to France 24's Africa Cup of Nations Roundup show. I'm Emily Boyle, and joining me on set to debrief all of today's football are Tando Sabia and Karim Balde. Welcome to you both. It was another busy day of AFCON, 4 games being played across Morocco as teams in Group C and D looked to secure their spot in the knockout stages of the competition. There was one big game in particular that took centre stage of Group D as Senegal faced DR Congo. Well, let's cross over to France 24's Selina Sykes, who was in Tangiers to watch that game. Selina, this was the battle of the big cats for top spot in Group D. How did it all play out?
That's right, Emily. The big battle between the Lions of Teranga and the Leopards of Congo, finishing 1 apiece here earlier today. Senegal, who were the winners of the 2021 edition of AFCON, were expected to tame the Leopards of Congo, but they were held to a 1-all draw. It was, and dropping points even like the other big favourites, Morocco. It was the Senegalese who got off to the liveliest start. They looked pretty dangerous in the first half. Nicholas Jackson, Bayern Munich striker, had a few chances, but just one shot on target for the Lions of Teranga in the first half. It was then DR Congo who looked much more livelier and threatening in the beginning moments of the second half, and the goal came just past the hour mark for the Congolese. Cedric Bakambu scoring for DR Congo, leaving the Senegalese quite stunned as they opened the scoring. The Congolese player pouncing on an opportunity as the Senegalese goalkeeper Edouard Mendy saved a first shot from Theo Bongonda, but didn't manage to keep the ball in his hands. So he pounced on that moment and opened the scoring for DR Congo, though it didn't take long for the Senegalese to equalise, and who other than Sadio Mane to score the goal for Senegal. It was really Ibrahim Mbaye from PSG, just 17 years old, making a big impact when he came off the bench. He took defenders on and got through defence, doing a first shot, sending a first shot to the Congolese goalkeeper. A similar situation really to the first goal. He did manage to keep it in his hands, and Mane was there to pounce for Senegal. A potential big blow for DR Congo. Masuko came off with a suspected Achilles injury in the second half.
Well, speaking of big blow, it looks quite windy there. I hope it didn't affect the game too much, but tell us, what does that draw mean for Senegal and DR Congo going forward?
It's just the wind affecting my hair on air, Emily, and also our lives earlier on were pretty windy, but in the stadium it was all calm, I assure you. How does that affect Group D? Well, that leaves both Senegal and DR Congo in good shape, really, to get into the last 16. This result realistically gives them both a foot into the knockouts. They both now have 4 points. Senegal are top. They're ahead on a goal difference, and obviously they will have now, shall we say, a lesser, tougher task in their final game, though they will have to wait until that final game to 100% secure qualification. And the group winners would have the benefit of facing a best third place team, so there's still all to play for in terms of finishing top of that group. Senegal will be facing Benin, while DR Congo will be facing Botswana, so weaker opponents, shall we say, for them both. Benin, though, are celebrating this evening because they got their first ever win at an AFCON as they beat Botswana 1-0 to get that first ever win for them at AFCON.
Well, we'll be coming back to Selina a little bit later in the show to talk about tomorrow's fixtures. But before we come back to the studio, though, let's have a listen to the man of the match, Sadio Mane, who saved the day for the Lions of Teranga with that equaliser in the 68th minute. Take a listen.
Je pense que on a fait un beau match ce soir.
I think we had a good match this evening. We fully deserved to win, but unfortunately we couldn't, despite the chances we created. I'll also say that DR Congo played well. They were compact at the back. They posed a lot of problems. let me say that they deserve the point, just as we did.
Ils ont aussi mérité un point comme nous.
So going back to our experts here, Tando, Karim, do you agree with Mane? Did both teams deserve a point during that game?
Yeah, they both had their chances during the game. It was interesting because from a Senegalese point of view, we can say that unlike what happened versus Botswana, because they had the same tactics, so they went forward from the first minute of the game, but they weren't able to score. And that was the main issue. And Selena talked about Nicholas Jackson. We know that sometimes people are not happy with him because he is not as efficient as we would expect from a forward like him, a striker like him. But this time, that wasn't Botswana in front of Senegal. That was DRC. And DR Congo, they were very powerful, very strong. Even they didn't have any shot in the first half, they knew how to respond during the second half, and they scored first. So that's why it was very interesting to see Senegal with that adversity, higher adversity than Botswana. But as it happened in Kinshasa back in October, they were able to react. And that's why I agree with Sadio Mane, because they reacted well, thanks to Ibrahim Baye, because when he get into the pitch, we see the difference in terms of speed, in terms of the way he can improve the attacking side of Senegal. So that's why, at the end, it's a good point for Senegal.
Tando, nodding along, do you agree there with what Karim is saying?
I agree that DRC didn't make it easy for Senegal, especially defensively. Seeing Chancel Mbeba had Ndiaye in his pocket, and I think that was an unfortunate decision for Senegal, because it looked like most of the opportunities were supposed to come through Ndiaye, or if it wasn't him, then it was Mane who was supposed to be creating the chances, a lot of runs down the left flank. And because then it wasn't working with the passes in, the crosses coming through, so you had to see Sadio Mane coming into the centre to then put it in the box like how he scored the equaliser. But for the build-up in the game, that you could see that they were left wanting because the DRC defence made it really difficult. So big kudos for Mbemba and him as a captain, ushering the defence, putting Iliman Ndiaye in his pocket, tucked it in very safely. I think it really worked very well. And so going forward, I think Senegal really have to look at how they're going to penetrate the defence to then finish properly. Also working on Jackson. He got a brace in the first game, but in the second one, it seemed like also DRC did a lot of their research, and they were left wanting.
Yeah, and even if Nicholas Jackson scored a brace in the first game, we saw after his brace that he missed some easy opportunities, and what we saw early into the game was that side of Nicholas Jackson, and that's why we never know what to expect from him, and it can be very dangerous when we go further into the competition.
Well, let's have a look at the other Group D fixture. Early in the day, it was the third place spot that was up for grabs. Both Benin and Botswana were on 0 points going into that game. A goal in the first half for Benin was enough to seal the deal. A historic moment for the Cheetahs, who take home their first AFCON win inside of regular time. Great result there for Benin. Tando, Karim, what did you make of that game?
I think it was, if you look at the highlights, you think it's like an action-packed game. Wow, what a game. But when you watch the whole 90, there were a lot of dry moments in the game where there was just a lot of end-to-end, not much action happening, a lot of tries but not good finishing. For Benin, it was a good result, but you could even see how emphatic they were at the end, seeing that it meant so much for them. But I do think that it wasn't their greatest performance, especially in terms of finishing, which I think a lot of the lower ranked teams are finding a little bit of difficulty in the final third to actually finish the game. And so I do think that the goalkeeper, Pando, his physicality is really important. And as a 24-year-old, he's got that young, fresh energy, not that much injuries. And so it really works to the advantage, because you could see even how he was just like, he would take a lot of knocks in the game. Patandaka was like really on to him throughout the game, putting a lot of pressure on him. So I do think that for him, he's really integral for the defense, but they can't have him be the final finisher for the defense. I do think that defense needs to be built up a little bit before him, because if there's too much pressure on him, then it's not going to be enough. Too much pressure on him. So I do think that's one thing Botswana have to work on in the next game, for the third game, if they want to make it as a best third, so that they can advance into the WTM or the last round of 16.
And of course... No,
from a Benin's point of view, it's a great credit to get that first win ever in an AFCON group stage, because even in 2019, when they went up to the quarterfinals, they did 3 draws during the group stage, and then they went up to the shootouts versus Morocco. That was a major blowout at that moment, but still they didn't have any win, and this was important. And we saw the difference between the first game without major players such as the goalkeeper, such as the captain Steve Mounier, and what they delivered today was a much better performance from Guarantors' side this afternoon. And that's why we have to give credit, and especially to the scorer, Johan Roche, because he was involved negatively versus DRC. He led the ball through, and then DRC could score the only goal of the game a few days ago, but now he get his revenge very early into the game, so kudos to Johan Roche and to the Cheetahs.
And you could see that he was compensating in the game.
Yeah.
He was really active throughout the game. You could see that he really had to make up for what happened in the last game. If anything, you could perhaps make the guess that somebody was in his ear that you have to make up in this game, and it was evident in this particular encounter.
Well, that was for Group D. Now, moving on to Group C, that was the first game of Group C, Uganda versus Tanzania there. The East African rivals, both of those teams were looking to grab their first points of the competition. There was not much in it in the first half, but it opened up in the second as Tanzania were awarded a penalty due to a handball. Simon Mazuva rocketed the ball into the top left corner to make it 1-0 for the Taifa Stars. Uganda, though, was not going to let the game run away from them and managed to bring it level in the 80th minute with a header from Ikpeazu in the final minutes of the game. Uganda was awarded a penalty. Unfortunately for the Cranes, Okello shot it over the crossbar. The score stayed at 1-1 at that final whistle. Well, last time we were talking about Uganda, we were complimenting them on their combative spirit. Is that something you saw in this game as well?
Definitely. I think I was incredibly surprised at the pace of this game. It was really fast-paced, a lot of short passes, a lot of quick play, and I think that's something I really have to pay kudos to, but I still put a lot of kudos to the Ugandan coach and the risk-taking that he's been making in this tournament. He made 5 changes coming into this encounter, even changing his goalkeeper, bringing on Dennis Onyango, a lot more experience in the sticks. So you can see that he's really just doing whatever it takes for them to advance, and I think it worked. Unfortunately for Uganda, they had a penalty, which Dennis Onyango didn't take so very well. But I think for the rest of the game, when there were some strikes in the 95th minute, he did a really good shot stopper. And I think that shows that perhaps in the upcoming games, we can expect a little bit more from him. It was unfortunate of the one going overhead of the crossbar, but I think that Uganda is a side that we can definitely look out for, saying the same for Tanzania.
And of course, that draw means that it's going to be quite a tough road to the knockout stages for both of those teams. How do you see it going forwards for them?
Yeah, first of all, we have to look at tomorrow's games to see what will be the situation after match day 2. But yeah, it could be tough because of their opponents. Obviously, they will both face now Nigeria and Tunisia respectively. Maybe I would give a short advantage to Uganda in terms of quality of play, but who knows what can happen. And with that system, with the 4 best third place groups, advancing to the round of 16, we never know what can happen with 3 points, maybe with 2 points, who knows, maybe with 2 points you can go through, but you have to have 3 points to be sure to go to the round of 16, so it's gonna be tricky for both of them, I think, but as we'll talk about it for Nigeria and Tunisia, you never know what you can expect from those 2 powerhouses, and especially in a third game where they would like maybe to put some other players into the pitch to get them involved into the competition.
Yeah, well, that brings us on nicely to that other fixture, the big game of the evening, a battle of the Eagles, the Super Eagles, against the Eagles of Carthage. What a game it was. Nigeria opened with 3 goals, 2 Lookman assists, 1 of his goals. Then Tunisia put 1 up on the board with a header as well. Then there was a penalty. I mean, it was just fireworks all round. What do you make of that, Tando?
Especially towards the end, I think Nigeria was found wanting. It wasn't necessarily the Nigeria that we're used to seeing, but we had a conversation with them that they tend to be found wanting towards the end of the game, but they never lose. So I think that's the advantage that they do have, is that they hold it down to the wire till the end. It's just unfortunate that they put so much pressure to even go too close to cardiac arrest for the goalkeeper, Nwabali, who was incredible at stopping the shots. But also the same thing that I said for Pando, you can't have the defense putting all the pressure on the goalkeeper. So I do think that they need to work on polishing and strengthening and solidifying that defense so that they can do better in the upcoming fixtures.
And they looked absolutely dominant in that first half, Nigeria.
Yeah,
I mean, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think happened?
It was a one-sided game. It was a one-sided game up to the 70th minute, I think, maybe even later on. That's why it's incredible to see how this Nigerian team managed to get into trouble. And it's not the first time. We saw it in the first game versus Tanzania, but we can go back to the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, the game versus Lesotho, for example, where with that last-minute shot from a Lesotho player, and they were on the verge to be equalized at the end, which is like unbelievable. And that was the same tonight. They built on a strong offense. Ademola Lookman, obviously, Victor Osimhen, he tried first try, nothing. Second try with a header, nothing. And the third one, he scored. So kudos to Victor Osimhen, because we know that he struggled to score in AFCON since the last one, but he managed to do it tonight, and it's going to be very important in terms of confidence for him and for Ademola Lookman. What a game from him, and the third goal was just magnificent. He played like so easily into the box. Even like defenders such as Jean Valery, they couldn't do anything with his dribble. So really, like on the offensive side, Nigeria is strong. We all know it. Yeah. But I still don't understand how they put themselves into this kind of trouble.
But there were still moments where they were kind of in front of the box and they had what looked like an open goal, and they were kind of going, you shoot, you shoot. And they were kind of not looking sure of themselves. Do you think there's still something going on with the confidence in front of the goal? What do you put it down to?
I think it's happening with a lot of teams in the African Cup of Nations, which I'm really like gobsmacked at why this is happening, because it's like the pinnacle of African football, and so you expect them to be performing really well. But I think when you bring all these players together, it seems like they lack a little bit of synergy, a little bit of preparation, which speaks to what we were speaking about at the beginning of the tournament, that they had only like 7 days to prepare, if not less, which is slightly less than what FIFA actually allows. And so I think this is starting to trickle down into the quality of the game. But I don't want to say that that's the only thing. Speaking to Karim's point, I think Ademola Lookman, we should look out for him as being player of the tournament, but not only looking at Nigeria as the offensive or maybe lacking in defense, but looking at the opposition. I have something to speak of the North African teams. This weekend, they dominated. We look at Egypt, we look at Morocco, we look at Tunisia. I think one thing that they do is play a mental game. And you can even see it in the highlights. They always have that little thing, like after scoring a goal, and they're like, and it's a real big thing. There's a physical game, but I think if you can tap into the mindset or the minds of the opposition, you finished it all. And I think that's exactly what Tunisia did. They stayed in the game all the 90 minutes, and you could see it in the way they performed right till the end. I think they were deserving of winning, but unfortunately for them, it just had to end the way that it did.
But why do you think they looked so different compared to last time we saw Tunisia play? It was against Uganda. Dominant, again, 3-1 win with that last-minute goal for Uganda there. They looked like a different team in that first half. Is that something that you think they're going to have to change for the last game of the group stage?
Yeah, because Tunisia is a little bit like Mali, those like African powerhouses, but we are always disappointed at the end because we feel that they could do better than they do. And this is the case each and every time for Tunisia since they last won the AFCON back in 2004 at home. So that's why I was surprised they were too shy. I thought that they would overcome that this time, but they were too shy tonight versus Nigeria for the first, and especially in the first half. It was better, way better in the second half, and they had that mentality to come back. And I think that the head coach, Sami Traoré, will keep that to push them to go further, and told us before the AFCON, when I met him in November, that they have to go further than expected, which is not the case for Tunisia. And this kind of situation, when they went back from 3-0 to 3-2, by and large, it could be a good thing to say, okay, we're going to stick on that, but we have to do better next time just to get more involved into the first half of major game, and that was the major test for Tunisia in this group stage.
I think to build on what Karim is saying, looking at the opposition this time, and this time in favor of Nigeria, it is known that Nigeria, as soon as the whistle is blown, they go straight for offense and high pressing. And that's exactly where Tunisia were found wanting. It's the intimidation that Nigeria places from the outset. And that can make it very difficult in the first half for you to even find your tactics, find your footing, because from the outset, they dominate. And then you're playing against the opponent, and you're not necessarily playing to your own tactics or to your own strategy. And so that's why Tunisia were able to come back in the second half, because they were able to read the game, go back to the dressing room, and then speak about it, and that's what we saw in the second half. So it's a little bit of an advantage for them because they're able to read the game. And so when you have players who are able to read the game and work to that and find it to work to their advantage, if they can do that and apply that same strategy in the next game, they can find themselves going really far in the tournament. But on the other side for Nigeria, they need to work on how they come back in the second half, and that they extend their play right through to the end of the final whistle, because they're not going to make it even to semi-finals if
They
they
had
keep playing like that.
they had a chance to Tunisia, and I don't understand why. But Tunisia has to be careful about the defense because we all agree that they have a strong defense. But tonight, what happened, especially on headers, because Nigeria scored on many headers, and we saw the centre backs, for example, Montassar Talbi or even Dylan Brown, they were beaten up in the air, and we were not used to see that before. So, well, this was a caution for them tonight.
Okay, well, that was our 4 games of the day. Let's have a look at those scores as a reminder. Benin beating Botswana 1-0 for their first AFCON win. Senegal finished and DRC finished level on 1-1 in Group C. Uganda drew against Tanzania with a goal each as well. And Nigeria, of course, going there 3-2 against Tunisia. Let's have a look at what that has done to the groups, starting with Group C there. Nigeria on top with 6 points. Tunisia below them. Uganda and Tanzania at the bottom there with 1 point. Meanwhile, in Group D, Senegal is sitting nicely on top thanks to their goal difference, despite having the same amount of points as DR Congo. DR Congo in second there. Benin in third, and Botswana at the back of the pack with 0 points. Now let's have a look at tomorrow. It's another packed AFCON day with 4 more fixtures. Gabon will be playing Mozambique, both hoping to get their first points on the board in Group F. Equatorial Guinea and Sudan facing off in Casablanca. Algeria are up against Burkina Faso, and reigning champions Ivory Coast battle it out with Cameroon. Now, once again, our reporter on the ground, Selina Sykes, will be following those games for us in Morocco. Let's cross back to her now. Selina, you will be in Rabat for the Algeria-Burkina Faso match. Both those teams are on 3 points. What can we expect from that game tomorrow?
Well, Emily, I think quite a close encounter it will be, has to be said. It's a crunch time for both Algeria and Burkina Faso, as you mentioned, both on 3 points. A win for either of those sides would send them through to the last 16. Algeria got a very comfortable 3-0 win against Sudan with a double from Riyad Mahrez, while Burkina Faso got that very dramatic 2-1 win over Equatorial Guinea with 2 very late goals. Still those 3 points for Algeria. It will be their first real test, and they've already banished the memory, shall we say, of their last 2 AFCONs where they crashed out of the group stages, struggling in those 2 last editions. The last AFCON in Ivory Coast, both Algeria and Burkina Faso were in the same group last time round, and in their group stage encounter, it was a very dramatic 2-2 result. So I think we can predict a pretty close encounter between these 2 teams, and obviously all up for grabs. The stakes are high as they both try to seal an early qualification.
And we also have another blockbuster game to look forward to as Ivory Coast go head-to-head with Cameroon. Are the Elephants the favourites going into that game?
I would say the Elephants are the favourite, Emily, but what a blockbuster clash between the defending champions Ivory Coast and the second most successful team at AFCON, that's Cameroon, with 5 titles in their trophy cabinet. It's decisive for the group, really. If either of them win, they'll also see themselves through into the knockouts. Ivory Coast getting a narrow 1-0 win against Mozambique in their opener. Maybe looking for more from the Ivory Coast, especially up against such a weak opposition. Cameroon the same, just 1-0 against Gabon. So obviously both these teams are still waiting to get started, shall we say, here at this AFCON. On paper, Ivory Coast do have the better squad. They have a lot more experience and exciting options, especially up front. A lot of attacking quality that if they all play well and everything is utilised, they should really overwhelm Cameroon in their match tomorrow in Marrakesh.
Well, we'll be getting all the latest from you tomorrow as you follow those 2 games. Coming back to the studio now, Tando, Karim. Another big, as Celine said, blockbuster game, almost as big as Nigeria, Tunisia, maybe bigger, defending champions against Cameroon. Are we putting in any predictions?
or it's hard to predict anything with Cameroon. Let's be fair, because you never know what can happen with this team. And we saw that in the first game versus Gabon on Christmas Eve, because we all thought that because of turmoil, internal turmoil inside the team, they wouldn't be able to raise the level. And it was the opposite. And that's why we have to keep an eye on Cameroon, and especially on Brian Bomo, Manchester United's forward, because he has such a great performance and he helped his team to win versus Gabon. So that's why I'm very eager to see that. I think that Ivory Coast has a slight advantage, but who knows what can happen with Indomitable Lions.
Tando?
Same thing as Karim. I was actually saying, Mbeumo, this is the guy to look out for. I think his experience playing in the Premier League is really paying off for the Cameroon side, especially considering the difficulties that they've had building up to the tournament. So you kind of need a little bit of stability, a little bit of leadership. And I think he's done a good game, getting an assist even in the previous game against Gabon. And so he's definitely a player to look out for. If we're looking out for him, obviously, then the technical staff of Ivory Coast is looking out for him as well. So he might be silenced during that game. But it's also interesting to see where other opportunities will be coming from. But I do think that with Ivory Coast, we've said before that they have a really strong attacking. And so I think for the defense of Cameroon, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but it's an exciting game. I don't have a solid prediction. It's a tough one to put myself on the line, especially considering earlier's game, the game earlier on between Nigeria and Tunisia. But I do think that with this game, I can say Ivory Coast are going to take it.
Do you think Ivory Coast are going to take it?
Yeah, I think, slight advantage for Ivory Coast.
Okay, what about some of the other games? Do you have your eyes on any of those? You've got Equatorial Guinea and Sudan. What do you think that might look like?
Karim spoke really highly of Sudan earlier, but I don't think this one is going to be okay, because we saw how Equatorial Guinea performed in the previous edition of the African Cup of Nations. They're quite strong up front as well. A couple of good chances, and even the finishing is quite solid. Earlier on, I was watching a few of the highlights of some of the best goals in the AFCON in 2019 and 2023, and Equatorial Guinea made the list as well. And so I do think that when it comes to finishing, they can be quite strong. And so if you're playing against a Sudanese side that are not quite akin to the African Cup of Nations, that I think it can be a little bit difficult for them.
Yeah. Equatorial Guinea can win with nothing. We saw it versus Burkina Faso. They have even half an opportunity, they can score. So who knows what can happen tomorrow.
Okay, well, we'll see. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, though. I'd like to thank my experts, Tando and Karim, as well as all the France 24 teams behind the scenes. The Africa Cup of Nations Roundup show will be back tomorrow with all the latest from Morocco. In the meantime, enjoy the football, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.